Welcome to Biz Help for You with host Candy Messer. Entrepreneurs like to focus on the big picture, like profitability, success, and a smooth running organization. But there always seems to be those little things like taxes, employee compensation, laws, regulations, and more. Now you can get the answers you need in one place. Join us today as we break it all down for you. Now, here's your host, Candy Messer.
Hello and welcome to Biz Help for You with Candy Messer. Thank you for joining us today. I hope you enjoyed the topic of our last episode, Be Different or Be Dead, the audacious, unheard of ways I took a startup to $1 billion in sales. If you are unable to join us and would like to listen to the show, links can be found on our YouTube and Facebook pages, as well as multiple favorite podcast platforms. And if you'd like to receive notifications on when our podcasts have been uploaded, please like and subscribe. Now let's learn a little bit about our guest today. Over a decade, Yadi Caro has traveled through various countries on her role supporting the U.S. military in the creation and management of software solutions. While her work relies on technical skills, she believes the so-called soft skills have been critical for the teams she works on. This is why she created the podcast Hardcore Soft Skills, where she talks with well-known experts on how to improve on each. This is part of her learning journey, as she is also a grad student in organizational psychology at Harvard. Yadi was born and raised in Puerto Rico. After living in Germany for several years, her husband and 2 little boys just moved to sunny Florida. She enjoys traveling, over 32 countries so far, and running. So, Yadi, welcome to the show.
Thank you so much, Candy. So very happy to be here.
I think this is going to be an excellent topic. It's one I've actually wanted to talk about for a while, but hadn't really known an expert. And so I'm glad that we were able to connect. But before we get into questions I have for you, I would love for you to tell me just a little bit more about yourself and how did you even get into teaching soft skills?
All right. Yeah. So, as you mentioned in the bio, so basically, my career overall in the professional world started in journalism, actually. And I was a journalist. That's where I went to my first master's in. And basically, I was always interested in more communications a lot. Then I kind of transitioned into the world of software development kind of by accident because I was a consultant and there were some projects going on. And then the opportunity opened up to go ahead and work with a team kind of promoting software solutions. I was intimidated at the beginning, I must say, because I was like, when my manager at the time approached me, said, "Hey, we want you to work on this particular project." I'm like, I don't know, I don't speak techie, I don't know all those things.
Right.
So then he went ahead and said, just basically, because what we need, he said, is people who can help us do outreach and communications. We need a particular skill set to be able to launch the project and kind of help with its success. So I went in, and that's how I started working in the field primarily of knowledge management, which involves a lot of talking with people and understanding what their needs are, and then translating those into the technical solutions out there. So it was a big learning experience, and I still learn a lot about either engineers and software developers, and it's been great. And that's how I started working in the kind of the field of IT within the DoD, the Department of Defense. And I've been doing that for the past 10 years. And what I've been realizing over and over is that when working with amazing people and amazing teams, there's always that component of there's projects can fail. They could have the best talent, but then they don't have the communication or the management needed, or they kind of don't know how to prioritize. So they lack leadership. So there's a lot of things that are the non-technical things. And that's how I was more intrigued into knowing more and learning more about human behavior in the workplace, and specifically related to how we can actually cultivate those skills like negotiation or proper prioritization, even meeting management, like all those things that are key to make sure that those projects that are technical, or all those initiatives can come see the light and can succeed. So that's how I've been kind of starting, and I've been working. I started the podcast, and I reached out to a lot of great experts to help me learn more about that. And I started my own research journey as well, studying at Harvard, and also developing now courses, and that has led me to develop courses that are going to see the light soon in terms of the soft skills, how to be a good team member. And that's where I've been focusing more, and I look forward to continue learning and coaching people as well on those.
Nice. So for someone listening who's saying, I'm not sure exactly what you mean by soft skills. I know the word skills in general, but can you give a definition of, what we'll be talking about for this topic?
Yes, absolutely. So it's good that you asked that question, because there's always that, from what I've seen, the term soft, quote unquote, is kind of seen in a negative light, like it's something extra or it's something that's not important. And that's why I call the podcast hardcore soft skills, because it's like these are actually tough skills to learn. And we may not need to call them soft skills if we don't like it. We could call them essential skills or other types of names. And those are referring to specifically those non-necessarily technical things, like what our skills, like technical skills, is what we do in terms of help us perform our job. Like, are you a good engineer? Are you a good software developer? But when it comes to those other skills that make you either succeed, like how a good communicator you are, how do you manage your time effectively, how to even negotiate, or how to even have that creativity and have a framework for that. Those are what I'm referring to when talking about soft skills. So there's a lot of them, and I've already right now on the podcast have 50 episodes, and each episode there's a different skill that I talked about with a guest. So it's all those other skills that are often kind of assumed that we have, that they were born with, but that we can certainly.
So, we've heard also like emotional EQ and things like that too, when people are talking about IQ and emotional EQ. So is emotional EQ kind of considered part of the soft skills?
Absolutely. Emotional intelligence is an essential soft skill. And the interesting thing is that it's made of other skills. Like when we're talking about emotional intelligence, we're talking about how do we handle conflict. And that in itself could be something that we could have a framework and practice and teach it. And it's just a matter of practicing. So it's how do we handle conflict? How do we handle that part of listening and communicating? So emotional intelligence is kind of an umbrella of different specific skills. And within emotional intelligence, you can have so many other things that you can develop in itself. So it's important to know that there are techniques, there's a framework for different things, and you can just apply what you consider applies to you to help you become more emotionally intelligent.
Well, and when someone's looking for an employee, obviously they know, like, I need to find someone with these certain technical skills, especially if it's, a more very specific job, that they need someone to have that talent. But soft skills are important as well. So, can you tell the listener why they should really be considering the soft skills as well when they're looking for a candidate?
Yes. And I've seen that tendency a lot lately when discussing about hiring people who have all these particular skills, like checking the box on like, did they have the certifications, or do they know SQL, or do they know like these programming languages? And when it comes to the job description, I've seen a lot of adding like being a good communicator or knowing how to prioritize. And it's important for managers to consider those. And even though it's kind of tricky to reflect those in a resume, you could say, I'm a very creative person, but how do you kind of assess that and measure that? So a good way to do that is, as a manager or hiring manager, is that when they come in for the interview, provide particular scenarios of not only measuring what is their knowledge and what other projects they have handled, but as you ask the questions, identify, for example, did they use this opportunity to learn? How adaptable, which is another soft skill, how adaptable these people were to changing environments? How do they engage with their peers? So kind of trying to frame those questions and bake them into the whole interview will be a good way to identify what is the rate of soft skill that they have or that they desire in a particular candidate. So it's important to measure, not measure, but at least getting understanding of how is the candidate either ranking or looking into that particular skill that they want to incorporate.
So if someone is interviewing a candidate and they want to interview for these soft skills too, do you think it's better to give like the same scenario to multiple candidates and you can see what their answers are? Or is it better to ask them to share a specific story that they've actually experienced that would reflect some of those soft skills?
That's a great question, because I think both approaches could work great, because sometimes when you're in the interview and you're kind of a little nervous and you cannot think of a particular experience, and then you go back as the interviewee and say like, why did I mention that? So from the perspective of the interviewee, perhaps it's good to have, if they offer more information about offering a particular scenario, but as an interviewee as well, you want to come in with some particular scenarios of your own as well. So that's important to know too. So I would think both examples are good. It all depends on what the job may be. So for example, if you're looking for a person who will be, let's say, a systems administrator, and you encounter this, you as the manager encounter this particular problem that, customers come in and they don't know what they want and they think they get angry and all that stuff. So it's expected that that individual needs to be able to handle angry customers. So how to be able to assess that not only how to do the proper technical things to help them out, but also, hey, angry customers, how do you deal with that? How do you what is a good way that you will handle an angry customer that just don't know what they want and they just want this thing resolved ASAP and they're not being very nice. So those are the examples of scenarios.
Right. And obviously different positions are going to require, certain skills, and some may be different for one position than another, but are there specific skills that you feel are critical kind of across the board?
Yes. So when it comes to being adaptable, I've seen that and again in terms of when hearing people that are in big either tech companies or they're just being big companies in general, because as we have seen for the past couple of years, the work environment shifted completely and a lot of people were not ready for that. A lot of us were not ready for that. So being adaptable is extremely important. And by being adaptable means like, how do you adapt to change? How receptive are you to changing your current situation and learning from others and maintaining a somewhat positive attitude about that whole any change? That's a good thing to have. Certainly communications is essential. And when we're talking about communications, it could be broken down into many different things, like how are you in written communication? That's very important because right now in this world, we communicate through chat, text, primarily. Virtual meetings, yes, but written communication and being succinct and being able to be understood is super important. So in communications, written communications, listening is an underrated skill, because being able to really listen to the people, like truly being able to not just react and want to express your point, but understanding is extremely important. So yes, adaptability, communications, and also managing conflict, because that's inevitable in every work environment to manage conflict. And I'm not talking about like avoiding conflict, not at all. It's how to have healthy conflicts with people, to be able to express your differences in a respectful manner. There's a whole framework that you can adopt as an individual to be able to manage conflict effectively and, never run away from it. So those are at least three of the skills. I could go on because I think they're all like super important, but at least in this work environment, they're super important as well.
So if somebody is saying, okay, I've got, some staff on my team that, they're excellent at the technical side of things, but there's some improvement maybe that they can make on the soft side skills. And I want to, be able to enhance the skills that they need. How can a manager or a business owner look at what is needed and how to improve that with someone? Is it possible, if it's not really an innate characteristic to train, how would you handle that situation?
Yeah, absolutely. It's possible, and it will be good to kind of start it as a dialogue with that particular person to be able to understand that it's not a, hey, you need to improve your, don't have the, you're not a people person or whatever that may be. So be able to have that particular dialogue of like, as a manager, being able to communicate with the person and say, hey, I've noticed, or either this, you're struggling in these things, or I've not necessarily heard complaints, but just that maintain that communication that you've noticed that there are certain things, and be specific about what you consider they need to improve, that individual, and hear from that individual, how do they feel about it, how receptive they feel about like, hey, yeah, you're right, I suck at public speaking, or I suck at this, and I know I need to improve, but do I need it for my job? And being able to express that, hey, this will be good because this will help you achieve XYZ. So once you have that receptive collaboration, and it's not like you're scolding the person or sending them to be reformed, it's more like a collaborative effort, then you can go into recommend either resources like, hey, why don't we take this? There's a lot of courses on this thing. What do you think about taking this course, or working with a coach, or something along those lines? So it's important that the person who needs to improve is aware that they need to change and is willing to change and modify that particular behavior. And it is possible that they can improve, become a great public speaker, or become think how to handle conflict better, instead of like throwing the computer aside or something like that. So those things, I think, as long as there's trust, I think it's certainly possible.
Well, and we know, we've heard before, public speaking is one of the greatest fears that anyone has, right? And it is hard to overcome that.
Yeah,
So,
absolutely.
well, I was just going to say, you were mentioning courses and things like that too. So, I mean, I'm sure, and you mentioned you're going to have some coming out soon too, but is it like a course is focused on like one specific like key feature you want to learn, or is it just overall training? Like, you need to work on some soft skills. So let's look at, like, what is the kind of training that's actually available to help someone if they know themselves they need to make improvements, or maybe a manager wants to offer, here's a course that you might want to, take to improve.
Yeah, it would be good to be specific if possible, because their range of soft skills is so wide that if you say take a course in soft skills, it's like, where do I even start? So for example, for productivity, I know the method, David Allen, who wrote Getting Things Done, he has a lot of great resources available in order to help create a framework for productivity. Negotiation, I myself took a whole class in negotiation at Harvard, and that was good because you can take a particular course in negotiation, and the whole point is to practice, not just get like, here's take the book, read it, and see what happens. It's having that time to practice and become better at it. The same with either written communication or the public speaking that we were talking about. So, or even that, let's say, the emotional intelligence as well, but try to be narrowed down into the specific things, because labeling a person as just bad at soft skills might not be very a good way to start a conversation. It will be like all of us, like there's a lot of skills that I certainly need to improve upon myself as a public speaker in front of, I'm great when it comes to, audio podcasts and stuff. I could be, I feel confident, let's just say, but then when it comes to a big group of people, I may feel certainly intimidated. So those skills that as the more we practice and the more specific we are, then I think it's that's a good approach. And once we start, we could kind of continue on learning more and more.
So in terms of working with someone, we've heard too that if someone is like on the autism spectrum, or if they have ADHD, they may have some issues as well with this. And so as someone who might be managing someone who maybe struggles a little bit, like, are there different ways to handle somebody that maybe has ADHD or some other issues versus someone who doesn't? Like, how would we manage that to not make them feel, like, I don't want to use the word attacked per se, but called out maybe or something, because there is a struggle that they would have.
Yeah, absolutely. And I've been learning a lot more. I decided to take an ADHD coaching certification because I wanted to learn more from that particular lens. And it has given me a whole broad new perspective on how to approach that. That goes back as well to creating, if let's say you're a manager and your employee has either autism or ADHD, and you may not even know about it, but keeping that line of communication open, it's important, that trust to build with the employee, because if they happen to disclose, hey, I'm ADHD, or I am not great in open spaces, work environments, then just try to be accommodating in terms of the particular individual style of the person. So try to understand the perspective, and try to understand as well that every person, regardless of what they have ADHD or autism or anything, we have a particular approach of that we can thrive. So for example, if I don't want to work in an open space, then what can we work together that, I could either have specific hours or go to a particular spot to work from. So in order to be able to do my job effectively, the thing that I was hired for to do effectively, or hey, don't necessarily put me in front of a big group of people, or just put me, let's say it's better, work best at virtual meetings. So always try to listen to your team and to the people that work with you. So basically, the bottom line is to understand that it's important to keep trust, and that it's important to be aware that there are differences. Like, for example, in a person with ADHD, for example, is that productivity tips or productivity techniques are not the same for everybody. So there's a famous book that says that just do the hardest thing first thing in the morning. Well, for a person with either ADHD or other, that will be like a disaster perhaps, because I just don't want to work on the hardest thing. I want to work on something different, and then I can focus on specific things. So it's just being understanding that being aware of the different approaches, and being able to have a trust and communication to every person at their particular work can really thrive.
Right. What I'm thinking as you're talking to is, obviously we all have issues too. Like, none of us are strong everywhere. So there's always places for growth. But in terms of looking at each person as an individual and having accommodations where necessary, or flexibility, so that you can give them the best opportunity for success. And it doesn't necessarily have to fit into a specific box that maybe we're defining as what success would look like. We can, try to be as flexible as possible to give them the opportunity to succeed in the way that's best for them as well.
Yes, absolutely. And that made me think of the example. For example, I'm a parent of an ADHD child, and the fact that I consider him extremely smart, and he is not great at testing when it comes to sitting on a chair for more than 1 hour and trying to focus and read. So there's these accommodations that this school system provides, that he's able to, like, okay, you can take the test and you can stand up and you can go around, or if you want to put headphones on, and then he thrives and he's always willing to learn. So we could adapt that same approach to a work environment where we have extremely smart people in what they do, and why put everybody in the same box? And what works for me as a manager, we want to be able to make our people thrive and being able to do their jobs and help the business in the long run. So that's all beneficial to
That reminds me of a story too. My son, he's never been identified as like ADHD or anything like that either. He just was always a bundle of energy. Literally from the time I was pregnant, he was like nonstop moving, and he struggled in school because, you had to sit for like this many hours in class until you had this short little break and then lunch and then, whatever. So it would be a real struggle for him. And then at lunch, he literally would run the whole time and burn off energy so that he could sit. And then at one point we had done like a homeschool. It was still public school, but it was virtual. And if we saw him getting antsy or anything too, my husband would literally say, go run around the block twice, right? And then he could come back and sit down and then he could focus again, but because he just had all this pent up energy. So I think where we can, as business owners, really work with our employees to see, like, maybe they do have a challenge sitting down at a desk for 8 hours a day straight, except for this little break, is difficult, and being able to work in things, that are going to make them successful, whatever that may be. So, as much as we can identify, like, what do we want or what do we need in the position, but what can we do to enable them to succeed?
Yeah, absolutely. Your son reminds me a lot. I am the person as well that if I don't go for a run, like I will drive my husband insane. So yeah. So yeah, and being on a desk for an extended period of time, like no for me. So yeah, absolutely. For business owners, it's important that they consider, because at the end, again, is they want to make people thrive and they want to have the best business out there. Why put everybody in a particular box, right?
Okay, so, well, I know we are getting to the end of the episode that we have. So I would love for you to share an offer that you would have for our listeners, and then how they can connect with you to follow up, whether it's social media, if you have a website, what links would you like to share?
Yeah, absolutely. So I have if you have not listened to the podcast, you can listen to it in all the major platforms, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, and others. So it's the website, hardcoresoftskillspodcast.com, and you'll find all the episodes and even a directory where you can search for the skill like productivity, creativity, and find an episode related to that topic right there. So aside from that as well, there's a link in the website for coaching. So if any person listening is more interested in kind of developing a particular skill and they consider that they need the help of a coach, then I'll be happy to help, including those any of you who have ADHD. And so just go to the link, and that's just basically will take you to schedule a calendar invitation. So I will be happy to talk with your listeners about that. And I'm also very active on LinkedIn. So for those people listening who have a LinkedIn account, I always share good information there. And I'm always happy to learn from others in that platform as well. And you can find me by Yadira Caro, or Yadi Caro, YADICARO. And just feel free to connect with me. I'm happy to connect with people and just learn from everybody. So yeah.
Perfect. Well, thank you, Yadi, for being a guest on my show and sharing your expertise in this area. I really appreciate your taking the time to be with me today.
Thank you so much, Candy. I love all the knowledge that you share on this show. I've always learned a lot, and on the business side of things, which I have a lot to learn about. So I always enjoy listening to your show.
Oh, thank you for that. That's one of the reasons why I have this too. I want to just share information from experts to help us be successful. I mean, we're all trying to, be out there running successful businesses. So what I can do to help them, by interviewing people like you, that helps. That's my goal. Also, for the listener, thank you for tuning in, whether you are, the individual who's looking to develop those soft skills, or you're the business owner who wants to learn how best to manage and work with those who need to make those improvements. I hope you found this topic interesting and that it did answer some of your questions about the hardcore soft skills. Make sure you reach out to Yadi at any of the links that she shared too, if you have additional questions or comments, or you can send us a message at media@abandp.com. I hope you can join us for our next episode, Combating Information Overload to Make Better Decisions. And please remember, you can connect with us on Twitter, Facebook, and LinkedIn. And my website is abandp.com. You can find the podcast posted on multiple favorite podcast platforms, including iTunes, Google, TuneIn, Stitcher, iHeartRadio, and Spotify. And would you please share our show with those you know and leave a review on your favorite platform? I'd really appreciate your support. Until next time, have a great day.
Thank you for listening to Biz Help for You. Please join your host, Candy Messer, again next time. Have a terrific day.